1590. The Lost Colony. England's enemy, Spain, was gaining far too great of a foothold in the New World. Their colonies in South America and Mexico, Cuba, and up into Florida were sending home galleons full of golden. The Spanish had already shown themselves fierce in fighting off the advance of French settlers, and if they weren't soon stopped, the entire continent would be theirs. The adventurous and wealthy Sir Walter Raleigh asked for and received from Queen Elizabeth the right to all lands not already claimed by another country. The lands between French Quebec and Spanish Florida were there for stout-hearted English adventurers to claim. With his own money, he equipped an expedition to form a settlement in the lands to be called Virginia. If they could find and fortify a convenient base for darting out and harassing Spanish treasure ships, the colony would pay off quickly and well. The first group of adventurers settled on the island of Roanoke in the summer of 1585. They reported the barrier island as very sandy and low toward the waterside, but so full of grapes as the very beating and the surge of the sea overflowed them. The land teemed with deer and bear, and the waters flashed with the fins of many fish, and mussels and oysters were as numerous as grains of sand. Ducks and cranes filled the sky, and with arrogance of their time, the English thought that the native inhabitants of Roanoke and nearby Croatian Island as little better than the bears or the wolves, unfit to be rewarded with such bounty. Where the English should have asked for help and given friendship, they demanded food and gave abuse. It was not a good start for a colony. By the time the next summer came around, the settlers were out of food, so it was with great relief that the colonists spied Sir Francis Drake and his fleet off the coast, hunting for Spanish ships to plunder. When Drake sailed back to England on June 19, 1586, the colonists went with him, bidding good riddance to Roanoke Island. Sir Walter Raleigh was a little pleased by the abandonment of the colony, but soon began plans to send out another group of settlers. In the spring of 1587, the new expedition set sail from England, with John White as governor. The group of 117 settlers reached Roanoke in July and began to repair the houses and fortifications. The Roanoke and Croatian Indians were little pleased to see the return of the violent and arrogant English, and their fears were soon justified. Almost immediately, the English attacked a village as punishment for the death of one of their members. It was a most serious mistake. They attacked the Croatian Indians, who were innocent of the deed, instead of the Roanokes. When they should have been planting crops, the English were instead planting anger and mistrust and hatred. It was at this time that Governor White's daughter, Eleanor Dare, gave birth to the first English child to be born in the New World. She was named Virginia and was one of the only things produced in the entire colony. No crops had been planted. The livestock had been butchered for food instead of bread for an increase of the herds. The English could expect no assistance from the Indians. Someone would have to return home for new supplies. There was no quick way to get word back to England except to go in person, and that person would have to be Governor White. He didn't want to go. He couldn't leave his family just as the autumn winds were beginning to shiver and oat grass on the dunes. But the whole company came to the governor, and with one voice requested him to return himself to England. On August 27th, 1588, he sailed away from the Roanoke colony, determined to get help, and sailed right into the outbreak of a war between England and Spain. No ships could be spared for sending relief to the colonists. It wasn't until the spring of 1590, 2 years later, that White was able to return. The relief ships approached Roanoke Island cautiously. In the dark, the rescue party blew a trumpet and sang familiar English folk songs. Their voices floated over the still, dark water, but no answer was made. In the morning, a search party landed on the island. At the summit of the hill, they spotted a tree carved with the letters C-R-O. Hastening onward to the settlement, the searchers found the houses in ruins. On the bark of another tree was carved Croatian. With all due speed, they returned to the ships, preparing to sail at once to the nearby Croatian islands. But in the night a storm came up, and the ships blew to labor under the wind. White wrote, "The weather grew to be fouler and fouler, our victuals scarce, and our cask of fresh water lost." At the mercy of the storm, the ships were blown off course into the Atlantic, where they were forced to return to England. No additional relief party could be sent back to hunt for the Roanoke colonists that year or the next. In time, new colonists set out from England for Virginia, and new settlements were established, but no further trace of the lost colony was ever found. In time, the carving on the tree trunks scarred over, and then the trees themselves fell and rotted away, back into the sand of Roanoke Island.